guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, we have a story titled Deployed and Destroyed. Guys, this story is about a guy. He is, I'm guessing, probably about my age, mid-40s. And he's sharing a story about how when he was young, 23 years old, back in 2001, he got with and eventually got married to a woman that turned out to be a complete and total train wreck. He was 23, she was 28, and he was going into the military. And to no surprise, just like many of these stories go, he was deployed. And sure enough, the second he's gone, what is she doing? Having affairs, cheating, the whole 9 yards. Complete mess. And then this just leads down to a downward spiral of this guy's life when he comes back, and how she just takes him to the cleaners, and his life's just a downward spiral because of her. However, guys, you're going to see that no matter how, in spite of his life definitely reaching a super low point, I'm talking low, this guy eventually makes a comeback, and in the end, he comes out on top, and she is going to be the one on the bottom. And I'm doing this, guys, aside from the fact that it's a nice comeback story, which we all like to hear, and to help motivate you guys that are at low points in your lives. You can always turn things around. Also, it's the warning about how if you go into boot camp or you're going to be deployed, don't go get married. Okay, I've done stories about this multiple times, and guys that have been in the military are well aware of this. The second they deploy, those wives, they're usually young, are off to the bars or the singles bars, whatever they call it nowadays. And many of you guys that watch those other videos I talk about this particular subject know what I'm talking about, because you have either experienced it or you've known other guys as well. You know, like the old joke of, like, if the military wanted you to have a wife that issue one. No joke. Does this mean that every single wife of a guy in the military is going to do this? No. But obviously it happens so many times and so often that it's quite the reputation. So best wait until you're out if you're going to go down that path. Don't go doing this, because guys do it. They're like 19 years old or 20 years old, and they get married, and the woman that gets she gets to benefit from all the housing, the benefits, the paycheck, all that. In the military, they're going to take care of her, not the guy. It's crazy. So this is a very important reminder of these type of things. But, like I said, in the end, after what you hear here, he will come out on top. He says, begins the story saying, this happened almost 20 years ago, and I'm over it. But I thought I'd post to see your opinions and similar experiences. He says, I never had what you'd call a healthy marriage to my first wife. That is an understatement. That's putting it mildly. And there was a lot of red flags I overlooked in the beginning because I had no real experience dealing with older women. Well, it isn't just older women, it's all women. He says, I was 23 at the time and she was 28. To keep it short, I signed up to join the military after 9/11. I knew we were going to war, and I was going to get deployed. I did my basic training at Fort Knox and got stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. My wife and I argued a lot at this point because she wanted to move, and I reminded her that it's not up to me where we go. I'm Uncle Sam's property until my tour is over. So right from the get-go, there's turmoil before he even leaves. So how do you think it's going to go when he is deployed? This poor guy just didn't have the knowledge that he does now. This is why I do what I do, guys, to help young guys out. They don't make the mistakes that guys that are older have gone through. It says, needless to say, shortly after being stationed at Riley, orders came down and we'd be deploying to Iraq. For as much as we argued, we had SEX many times over the next few weeks. It was almost like when we first met, so I obviously didn't think anything was wrong. Fast forward to deployment day, and we're both a mess. I'm sure you can imagine. I'll spare you the boring details of the flight over because it really not much to tell. He says, we hit ground in Kuwait, and I was across attached to a 2-34 armor, big boy shit. We were tasked with securing various locations for rebuild and reuse. I can't give more details than that. I was deployed for 3 months before we had a post set up enough to receive mail and make calls from a Saturday phone. The first few times I called, I got no answer. And mail started to flow for everyone, but me. Care packages from family members came once a week, and every week I waited for a letter or something from back home, and every week nothing came. No phone calls were answered. So he's over there, and his ass is on the line, and when he calls, no answer. No letters, no care packages, nothing. That sucks. It said it got to a point where other soldiers started donating things to me because I had nothing but a standard TA-50. I don't know what that means. You military folk can let me know. He says, 9 months in and still no letters or packages or phone calls from my wife. At this point, I was mentally not in a good place. He says where I was at was a very bad place, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I sound like Forrest Gump. So 9 months, nothing. Meanwhile, she's still living in his house, which is paid for by the military. She's obviously going to get his paychecks provided by the military, but she's not talking to him. You see any fairness here, guys? What a load of shit. I'm told I need to take leave and go home, not knowing why I'm sent home, only to come home to an empty house. When I say empty, I mean completely empty to including my clothing. Later, I found out that through my neighbor that she had moved with some dude into my house for 4 months, and the rumor was she was, wait for it, pregnant. So he's overseas, and meanwhile she has another dude living in the house and living off this guy's paychecks. I told you guys, this is a stereotype, but it happens obviously so much that a lot of guys know about this. Don't freaking get married before you go in the military or get deployed. Wait until you're out if you're going to do it. He says it gets better. She stopped making my car payments and it was repoed. Cleaned out the bank accounts and run up the credit cards buying new household items for her new place. She would camp out at the ATM machine and wait for my pay to hit my account and withdraw all the money except change. I would have tried that, but the nearest ATM was 5 to 7 miles away, and I had no car, and it was the dead of winter in Kansas. Let me tell you, washing your clothes in the sink and drying them on the railing on the step every day because you don't have a washing machine or a dryer wasn't fun. I also had to beg my MREs from supply because I had no money to eat. She made sure of that. What did this guy possibly do that was so bad that she would treat him like this? Unless, of course, she's a complete piece of shit. And that's what she is. But our story isn't over yet, guys. Does this sound like an ideal situation? You young guys are watching me here that maybe thinking about going in the military? Well, think twice. And I don't want to hear, oh, my girl's different. You'll see if you don't listen to me. He says, I saw her for about 10 minutes before hang on a second here. I saw her for about 10 minutes before out processing from the military. At that time, she decided to let me know she was having twins, and obviously they weren't mine. And Jag doesn't give two shits about the soldier, just the spouse, and even though she cheated, she was still entitled to my check, which she was taking. Again, total bullshit. We're obviously divorced, and I left a good bit of the other shit she did out, because if I did, this would be a novel. If you want to know, drop me a comment and I'll post that later. That's the end of part 1. Now we're going to part 2. And it still is going to get worse for the guy, but he will make his comeback. Part 2. He says, here's an update and some of the more personal details I left out of the original post. He says, when I got back to the States and saw my empty house, something inside broke, which I'm sure most of you can relate. But I was also severely shell-shocked, PTSD. I'm old school. That's what we called it back then. At the time, I wasn't in contact with family, so I had no contact with people aside from the wife, and she had abandoned me. Friends, I tell you, staring at those silent walls, hearing voices, and damn near wanting to respond to them can test your sanity to its limit. My commander knew something wasn't right because I had gone from about 220 pounds down to 170 in about 1 month due to stress, lack of food, not sleeping, and jogging 3 miles every night to quiet the voices in my head. 50 pounds in a month? Holy shit. This guy needs help. And it's such a shame he doesn't have it. And how many guys come back from war and it's the same situation? I was eventually committed to the Topeka Hospital for treatment, and prior to this, I hadn't really spoken to my ex-wife, and since I hadn't been back, I'd seen her around post driving a car she bought in my name with a general power of attorney. I was now at my lowest, sitting in a mental hospital, broken mentally and physically, and wanted nothing more than for it all to end. And nobody can blame you, man. He says, let me tell you, if you've ever been in one of those places before, you know it's a different animal. I mean, you will see things that make you question how bad you really got it. Don't get me wrong, my situation was the ass end of terrible, but it could have been way worse. I get the notice that I have a visitor, and guess who? My ex-wife, a full 6 to 7 months pregnant, who basically came to see if she could finish the job. He says, you're not going to believe this, and honestly, if it hadn't happened to me, I would not believe it either. She told me everything. That she had moved him in 2 weeks after I was deployed. 2 weeks he's gone, she moved another dude in, which meant she obviously had that dude in the background before he even left. What I tell you guys, and the affair had been going on for a year. Every time I went out for a field operation, he was there. And that they had planned to leave as soon as I got back, but decided it was better to be out before I got back. At this point, I was completely seeing red, and I took every ounce of my mental strength and discipline not to fly over the desk and break both feet off her cheating ass. I don't know what came over me, but I got this crazy calm, and I guess my poker face came out. She wanted a reaction. Guaranteed. But he didn't give it to her. So that's the one thing he could do. He says, I remember the look on her face changing from a smug, bitchy, I hope you rot in here look to WTF. I remember feeling like a passenger in my own body because I wasn't controlling my mouth at this point. I said, so, is there a point here, or are you just bored? She said, I'm taking the rest of what you owe me. Owe her for what? She is pure evil. I said, I don't owe you anything and that you haven't already taken. What more can you take? You got my money and now my freedom. And I have one question for you. What the F did I do to you that was so bad I deserve this? Her answer, wait for it, I wasn't happy. Therefore, it's his fault. And she's going to exact her revenge. That answer solidified in my mind that I needed to get out of here as far away from her as possible. I said, I'm done, and got up without speaking another word. I'm not proud of this part, but it's what I needed to do. He says, I spent the next month in every session giving the perfect performance of as normal as I could. I had some setbacks, but for the most part, I nailed it. The reason I said I'm not proud is because I faked it 100%. I was released 2 months later. The damage was done, and this friend was when I realized how bad I really was. Over the 2 months. Over the 2 months I was in the hospital, she had stopped taking all my money and was leaving about $300 out of each check. I guess it was better than nothing. Oh, well, she had a heart. She left him $300 instead of some loose change. And if they're supposed to be divorced, how is she still getting his checks? Or maybe they're not divorced. This poor guy. I felt so bad for this guy. I fell into alcoholism horribly and was blowing my little bit of money on alcohol and going to the strip clubs. I was completely out of control. I figured I had nothing else, so I got nothing to lose. This went on for about 2.5 months of alcohol, dancers, and sex with barracks rats. He says, military members know what this is. Until I got papers to out process. And I remember asking the NOC on duty, since I get paid tomorrow, am I technically out of the Army today? Do I have to pay my soon-to-be ex? No. My God, I finally got thrown a bone. I asked for the earliest damn flight I could, hopped on the plane and watched Kansas get smaller and smaller in the window. And it was the best feeling in the world. Okay, he's finally divorced. He's finally free. Thank the Lord. Now this guy can truly start rebuilding his life. Unbelievable. He says how she got hers. There's really a whole other story in between, but I'll get right to the part where she gets hers. About 2 years after that, I get served divorce papers. Yes, I know I should have filed. And I'm sweating because we know how this goes for most men. And at the time, I was dating my current wife. So he got out of the military, but I guess it looks like they were obviously separated. I don't know what. So he no longer had to let her get the money. But he still didn't get divorced for a couple of years later. He says, so my father, my girlfriend, and I head down to the courthouse, and I saw her there with a friend, and she instantly looks at my girlfriend, and I can see the anger and jealousy well up in her eyes, because my girlfriend is an upgrade in pretty much every way from her imaginable, and she knew it. So even after everything she's done to this guy, and she's a complete lowlife, still, she's pissed off because he's gotten his life back together. He's with a woman who is obviously way prettier than her, and she's pissed off about that. Guys, let me tell you something. Quick interruption. I got to point this out because it's fresh in my mind. For those of you guys that are dating relationship types and you've been dumped or mistreated or whatever it is from a previous girlfriend or wife, whatever, The best success in life, the best revenge in life is success. But to really stick it to your ex, one thing that will infuriate them more than anything is you move on and you end up with a woman that's better looking than her. And as a cherry on top, younger than her. That will make them freaking crazy. And you know what I'm talking about for you guys that have experienced this. Nothing will make them more insane than them seeing you happy and with a hotter, younger woman. And this is what this guy did. So good for him. Goes on. We got into the court, and at first it seemed like it was going to go as I thought, till the judge, another woman, saw that I was deployed and that there were kids involved. When the ex hurriedly tried to rush past that, the judge asked, "What was the arrangement?" I said, "They aren't my children, Your Honor." She again looked at her paperwork. It all changed from there on. Here comes the Enola Gay, folks. A close friend of mine reminded me that she was married before, so when I got the divorce papers, I went downtown to pull those records to see when her absolute divorce papers from her first husband. And guess what? She was still legally married 4 days into our marriage, and it was annulled that day. So his ex, who was married before, I might add, red flag he ignored. Technically speaking, she was still married when she married this guy. Well, that changes everything, as you're about to see. He says, the best part was her plea to the judge that I knew she was still married. The judge said, that doesn't matter. You knew you were still married to your first husband, and you still said yes. I'll see you again for, wait for it, polygamy. Polygamy is obviously having multiple spouses, which is illegal. So now she's in trouble for this. Not to mention the fact that she was still married, and therefore then all these years took this money from this guy, and she was still married to another dude when they got married. You can imagine the domino effect where this is going to happen, guys. He says, the hell that I suffered was over, and I walked out of that courthouse like I had 10-pound balls and 5 pounds of underwear. I married my girlfriend 2 years after that, and we had a son. We are 10 years into our marriage, and the last time my father saw my ex was at a bus stop with her 2 kids. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. So, yes, this is an abrupt ending to the story, but guys, like I told you, and you heard this whole story, if you listen to the whole thing, this guy went through hell. He just didn't know any better. He didn't know. He didn't have somebody tell him, don't get married before you go in the military. This woman's a piece of trash. Pay attention to the red flags. This is why I do what I do, and I want to help you guys. These stories, real stories, personal stories, articles, they help guys out. But good for this guy. Good for this guy. He went through hell, and he stayed strong. I guarantee it was that military training that definitely helped in that. This shows you guys, no matter how bad your situation is, if you make the choice, you want to get out of it. You want to turn things around, you can. It may take a while, but you just do it day by day, even hour by hour to get by, and you will get there. And certainly get support from your family and your closest friends and all that, and you will turn your situation around like this guy did. And for that rotten piece of crap ex of his, he doesn't get into like, I have to wonder if he sued because she was still married to somebody else, and technically I have to wonder if criminal charges were put against her by that judge, or that was unraveled things, because technically speaking, she was married when she married this guy, and it's polygamy. I gotta wonder what happened there, and if those things that did happen, that would open the door for him to do a civil suit for all the money she took from him. I gotta wonder about that. He doesn't mention that, but I'm very curious about that. But ultimately, she gets hers. This guy turns his life around. He says he's married again. He says he's very happy. I hope after all that he's married to a good one. He learned to screen much better. Because again, when he got married to her, he was very young. He didn't know any better. And this is the type of guy that every woman should want. This guy, at 9/11 happened, he signed up for the military. This guy had balls. This guy was a patriot. Good for him. So anyhow, guys, crazy story there, but lots of lessons there. And I hope those of you who watched the whole thing, I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of lessons. Hope you young guys that are either in the military or one day think you want to go in the military, remember, you're going to get married, wait till you're out, because there's too many of these crazy stories out there. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below and what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.